Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of the Umana Yana podcast. I'm your host, Josh Dripal, and today I'm very excited to be bringing to you a special guest, someone who I met earlier this year named Jake. And today's topic is really around mental health, fear, and entrepreneurship. Those are some big topics, and I think that a lot of us, dabble in that. We might have some personal firsthand experience in being some of those things. Entrepreneurship is something that a lot of us are really involved in, and I think, we could use some guidance because there's not necessarily a guidance so that we can reclaim some of that time. And I think Jake is the perfect person to help us connect with more of that. So I've invited Jake to join us in our conversation today, and we're just waiting for him. So thank you everyone for jumping in here. We really appreciate it. Episode 8 already, and this is truly special. I love having these highly intentional conversations with people that I meet in my everyday life. They are truly special, and the goal of this podcast is really to help everyone to connect more with their own voice, their own offerings, the things that they truly want to bring to the world, for us to be brave, use our voices, share our medicine. So, without further ado, I am looking at Jake's request here to join. Let's see if we can get him in here. For anyone who does any of these Instagram live events, you know how sometimes these technical issues can certainly stall the process, but all part of it. We just got to flow with it sometimes, right? So, Jake, I've actually resent the invite. There we are. Hey there, Jake.
Hey, I'm in. All
Oh,
right.
awesome. Thank you for being here, man. How are you?
I'm doing so good, man. It's good to see you.
Likewise, likewise. Where are you coming to us from today?
Currently in my living room in San Diego.
Very nice, very nice. I'm actually in my bedroom in Costa Rica. So, a little bit different from the last time we were actually in person. We were both in Guatemala together. Um,
So lucky
yeah,
we were.
yeah. I'm so
Yes.
grateful, man. Every time I see a pineapple, I'm reminded, of our time together. Anytime I
Piña,
sip some
piña,
cacao,
piña.
oh man, can't help but break out into song in the grocery store, man. Awesome. Well,
Me
Jake,
too.
the way I like to really kick off our episodes is I like to turn it over to my guests for them to introduce themselves as they see fit. The reason for this is because sometimes I know we get framed, by some of our accolades and things like that, and we might not resonate fully with those or want to lead with those. So I really want to hear from you, Jake, the man himself, an introduction for the people out here.
All right, all right. Thanks for that. Introduction. Let's see. I would definitely say that I am somebody who is really trying to embody as much as I can as far as spiritually, mentally, emotionally, with all that I do. So whether that's yoga, breath work, spirituality, and just discovery in general, always working on trying to expand and open up as much as I can along the way and have fun in the process.
Yes, definitely. Something that our time together, as short as that was, is I saw you really go inward. And I could tell that this is such a highly intentional human who really wants to know the depths of his soul. And, I was so drawn to you for that reason and so many more, man. So thank you so much for showing up the way you do, because I know the way that you just choose to live your life every single day inspires so many. And it's so magnetic. It's so authentic and raw. And I truly, truly appreciate that, man. So thank you.
Of course, thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks for seeing me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, before we kick off today, we do have an action-packed, sort of time together here. But I want to ask you, what is one thing that you feel really grateful for today?
Today is definitely my walk this morning. Like it starts my day. Every day I live in beautiful San Diego, so the weather's always pretty much perfect. And as soon as I wake up, I do my meditation, I walk outside and I have the waterfront, the Bay of San Diego pretty close by. So I walk it every morning and it really fills me with gratitude every day. So it's the way I start off and it feels like it sets me up for the entire day ahead of me. Yeah,
Oh,
so that's
beautiful.
always drops into a place of gratitude with that. That's the first thing that just popped up. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, man. And you know what? The more and more I read different things and understand the life stories of some of the greats in the world, right? I see the value that they place on taking those walks. I've seen that some of the best writers in the world, some of the people who have, been captains of industry, they credit so much of their peace of mind and balance and creativity to giving themselves permission to take a walk and just observe nature around them on a daily basis. Is that something, a personal practice of yours that you've had for a long period of time, or is that kind of a new thing you've incorporated for yourself?
It's a new thing, actually. I used to very much start my day off very disciplined with like learning. I had like a stack of books that I would read every morning, and just like kind of it became kind of like a checklist, to be honest with you. And I realized that I was just getting through it as if it was like, all right, I just gotta like check this off, but I wasn't fully absorbing everything either. So that was like the first realm. And then I slowed it down to like, oh, let me just actually read a little bit and really let it soak in and meditate on it. And then in the last, since I moved to San Diego, so about 2 years, I'd say like about a year and a half, I've been doing the walk in the morning and letting my morning be a bit more expansive and letting go of so much kind of heady things, like really getting in the head about like learning a lot and letting myself just actually be more open and get out of nature. Because I feel like when I'm out there, it brings a grounding for one, but it also feels like it opens me up into more expansiveness. I'm able to get out of the head and really take in what is happening around me and drop into a greater sense of appreciation right from the get-go. And then with that, like I'll also add in like my podcast or whatever in the morning, and still doing a bit of a learning, but at the same time, I feel like my body is able to get some movement, blood flowing, and it's able to really get myself out of under the heaviness of the mind that it
Mm.
tends to weigh on a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you found that it's helped you to be a bit more present and productive in all the other things that sort of follow you in your day after you have that morning walk now?
Yeah. Yeah. I really started noticing this attachment that I had to like, all right, I have to get in all my studying and all my learning. And it was like kind of a drill sergeant
Mm.
for a bit. And it was a bit like kind of hard on myself. I realized that was like also kind of a sense of like me like forcing myself to do something. And I was like, what would I really enjoy? Like what would really kind of be the best way for me to start off my day? And when I did that, I realized that it loosened up something. And even when I start doing the studying and the stuff, I'm able to absorb it a whole lot more because I'm not feeling like I'm forcing myself to do it, and I'm coming into it in
Mm.
a more open, expansive way. So it definitely fills me up in a beautiful way in the morning.
Yeah, no, I really like that, and I think I might take a page out of your book and try a morning walk to start my day. I hear how much impact it's made for you, man. So as people get to know you and look at your Instagram page and look at your website and things like that, right? Something that becomes abundantly clear is that you are all about helping us to connect, right? You're helping us to connect with ourselves, our intention, our purpose, our body, and the larger ecosystems around us, right? Now, I see how much you try and really harness the body and the mind and whatnot, right? Now, is making sure you feel super connected to that and empowering others, is that something that you've always found yourself feeling called to? Like this is a sense of purpose that I have, or did this come from a deep learning, say from a personal experience where you yourself felt out of touch and then said, hey, this is actually the right way for me to focus my attention?
Yeah, good question. I would say physical activity is definitely something that's been very active in my life since I was younger. I started going to the gym like at 16. So I got like a gym membership at 16, started going a lot. And then I would say the thing that first like connected or really hit me with it was I was on the wrestling team in high school. And there was a basically another person in my weight class that was in the same team as me. And every week we'd have to wrestle off to see who was gonna get like the varsity spot. And one week we were wrestling off, and every week I would lose. Like I
Mm.
wrestled, but I didn't love it. Like I didn't have the heart for it. And it's like,
Okay.
especially when you're like doing something that serious, like you have to have the heart, or it just doesn't work well with anything.
Right.
And so I remember I wrestled him off one day, and I lost. And at that moment, I was just like, I'm done. And I walked off the wrestling mat and just left. And then the whole time I was like, oh my God, I quit. Like I walked out. I gave up is kind of how I looked at it. And then I got in the car and I drove to the gym. And as soon as I got to the gym, like something settled. Like it was something within that I was just like, it's okay. Like you didn't. like that's not a place that fills you up. Like it wasn't anything that you were really like you had the heart for. You were doing it because you thought that you had to do it or were expected to do it. It's like a family tradition kind of a thing. But when I got to the gym, it was like something just like set upon me where it was like, you're okay, like, and this is okay. Let's just move. And I started moving, and it completely like reset my system. And there was like something with that. And then let's skip through like another few years. I had another moment in my life that just felt like I was just like beat up and just like a failure. I went right to the gym, and it clicked again. It was like that same feeling sh- came upon me, and I was like, okay, like you're gonna be okay. And it was that moment that I went downstairs, I found the fitness manager, and I was like, what do I need to do to make this part of my life? And I was 19 at the moment, and he was like, all right, little kid, like you go get this certification and then we'll talk. And then I left and I signed up for it. A few months later I came back and I was like, I got it, I'm a certified trainer now. And then he like gave me a chance, and so that's when it started my like fitness career.
Yeah.
And it really was able to be a place where I was able to take this essence that like it really was something that like gave me so many gifts, and I felt like that was the first time I was able to like share those back. So it became
Mm.
kind of a giving from this beautiful receiving that I had with to begin with. Yeah.
I love that. And for anyone who sees Jake in person, it's no surprise this guy's an absolute specimen. He's worked with several of the very well-known brands out there, very much been at the front of those things. And, Jake, like as a guy, right? Like you mentioned the gym being that place where you came back and you found that sense of, okay, a recentering, a rebalance and whatnot, and a sense of, reconnecting and understanding how to move in a different way, right? Now, I'm super curious because a lot of us guys, we tend to go to the gym and it's just like, all right, all I'm going to do here is I'm going to lift the heaviest thing possible. I'm going to prove to myself that I'm worth something. I'm going to walk out. Right now with you, it goes beyond that, right? Like, of course, you've got the muscle and the definition and all of that, but you also have a lot of that core strength, that almost invisible strength, if you will, that comes from doing things other than just weightlifting, which a lot of us guys are kind of just drawn to, right? So, things like breath work and yoga and meditation, all of those things are very, central to a lot of your teaching. So I'm just curious, how do you go about really bringing that into the conversation around, hey, it's great that you have this movement routine where you go and you lift and all that kind of stuff, but there's also a place for this, and this is why it would be beneficial. How do you go about really introducing that conversation? Because I find that that's one super necessary, but not all that effectively landed.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I For me, I would say my experience with it was very much that to begin with. It was like, oh, let's just like go and move. And I would notice that I would avoid the things that I just wasn't so good at and only just focus on like the parts of the body that could be seen. Like, oh, I was gonna make sure I
Yeah.
get my chest and my biceps. Like, let's get those arms going. Things that you can show off. And then as I started progressing, it was like, there's other parts of the body to be more like to really focus on and find a balance. And so it was like a slow titration of building up this deeper power. And then being able to go into yoga and stuff like that was able to go even deeper. So with that, I really just try to share my experience in a way. When I was doing personal training with clients, I would slowly introduce them to stuff like that. So we would still do, the lifting, but in between sets, we would do a whole lot of more kind of the deeper core and deeper uh sense of awareness of what's actually happening in the body, because we can go there and just like throw around the weights in an unconscious way, which usually ends up bringing injury along the way, or we
Right.
can really kind of like slow things down and take the time to really feel what's happening. Can you feel the bicep flexing and working as
Mhm.
you're curling the arm? Can you feel the chest fibers getting activated as you're doing the chest press, and really get them to go into a deeper sense? And I've noticed that when I was able to lead them in a way where they're able to get more in tune with what is happening with their body when they're feeling through it,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it opens you up into a different layer, and we can start to introduce the other things along the way. But I would do it more as kind of like a small introduction along the process. So let's give you what it was that you thought that you wanted,
Yeah.
and let me give you what you actually need to.
I love that. I love that. And
Yeah.
what you said there really resonated, man. Like about, us actually feeling the movement, right? Like when we're doing a bicep curl, are we actually feeling it? And I actually caught myself the other day. I was working out and, my head was totally somewhere else. I'm like, oh, I'm done my workout. But like as I looked back, I'm putting the stuff away. I'm like, I don't think I felt or was super present for about 80% of this. I think I'm most present right now as I'm putting these things away and thinking about the next task I have to get to. So I've found that even myself, with as many practices and wonderful people like yourself that I know and have in my ecosystem, I still have these moments where I'm disconnected from my body despite having all of these tools at my grasp, right? So I'm curious for you, from your own lived experience and what you've observed from other people, why do you think we've grown so disconnected from our bodies, even though this is the thing we live in 24/7?
Yeah. Distractions. I think that's the easiest answer. There's so many other things that are around that just are pulling us different directions. I look at it the same as meditation. So it's like when we're taught to do meditation, it's can we be aware of the thoughts that are coming in without attaching to them? And so the same thing when we're showing up for anything in life, can we be how much are we actually showing up? How aware are we with each other? Like if we're
Mm,
having this conversation and yet I'm sitting here on the phone or reading something, I'm not fully present with you.
right.
So it's that I'm not really showing up for you. And it's like, how are we doing that in other things in our life? Like you said, the gym, like you were only
Mm,
there 80% of the time. Maybe we were getting the movement in and you are going to be getting something out of that. But there would be so much more that we could be getting out of it if we fully put ourselves in it. And it is a practice. That's the thing. Like
right.
it is easy to get distracted and get pulled in other directions and still think that I'm doing something because I'm still moving. And yes, you are in a way, but if we got rid of all the other distractions that are so easy to get pulled into, we'll be getting a whole lot more out of it, which I'm going to guess that if we're able to really fully show up for our workout 100%,
Yeah.
we're going to get a whole lot more results. And we're going
Yeah.
to be able to feel a whole lot deeper into what's actually happening.
Yeah, I agree with you because even when I've done just body weight things, for example, but I commit, like I make this very, very conscious, deliberate choice to be super present for it. I find like my body feels more jacked up. It feels stronger, it feels like things are popping more and all of that kind of stuff. I'm getting more of the results that I was hoping I was coming for. So it's almost like a key to success in just about anything is to be present for it, right? And for us to
Yeah.
remove some of those things, the distractions, maybe clear out the calendar so it's not so tight from the end of your workout to the next time you jump into something. I think that can really go a long way. So we can be a bit more present because, not being able to be present and fully in tune with our body, I think that definitely, has a trickle down effect into a lot of other things, right? That can tie into our memory and our forgetfulness, how we show up prepared for a certain event or, occasion or something like that, right? That really bleeds into a lot of other things. So I think us really committing to being more present, can certainly go a long way. You know, um, Jake, I'm super curious. I thought you would definitely be a guy to ask about this. Have you read the book, The Body Keeps the Score?
I have.
You have. And what would you say, would be a really valuable takeaway for, some people who are watching this maybe live or who are going to watch the recording? What's something that you could share that really stuck out to you as a person who does work with the body on a very regular basis and works on yourself, not just your body, your mind, everything, your spirit. What's some valuable stuff that you picked out from there that really guides you as you do your thing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would say to answer it the simplest way possible is to really take the time and feel. Like it really comes down to that. Like is as we're fully showing up and feeling what's going on, and then even learning how to breathe into that area. Let's say that I'm taking some breaths, and I want to make sure that I'm taking the time to really notice the breath. Am I fully breathing? And that's you're going to notice that's the case with so many people is we end up having very shallow breaths or shallow breathing cycles. And so if I can take the time to really slow down the breath and allow my entire body to take in that breath and feel myself expand with that, like we're going to have a deeper awareness. But here's the thing that ends up happening. Let's say that I show up and I try to work on extending my breath and feeling it through my body. I'm going to notice that I'm going to come up to certain blockages of the body where I'll try to breathe in. It's like, oh, my breath is actually getting stuck before it can even reach my chest. What is that about? Can I allow
Mm,
myself just to sit with that and to slowly keep breathing into that and try to soften myself? Another thing to notice too is as you're breathing, is my body tensing? Is it getting tight? And then noticing where that tightness is. So with the body holds a score, it definitely goes in a whole lot deeper of like, oh, like this means that we're, we have a trauma that we're experiencing that was held here. But it all comes down to feeling, like even without having to get so much into the head of what is this about or where is it coming from. We
Mm,
allow ourselves to really sit with it and feel through it and actually hold it with love and comfort and space. A lot of
yeah.
times it ends up releasing and letting go. And sometimes along the release and the letting go, we end up having a memory that will pop up or something that we can actually hold space for and actually be
Mhm.
with and get
Right.
a healing based off of that. But a lot of it is really being able to learn to tune in and just be aware of your breathing in general and see how your body's reacting and responding to that breath. But starting
Mhm.
there, like starting with just breathing.
Yeah.
And it, obviously it sounds very simple. Just breathe. And it's like, oh well, I'm always breathing. But how often are we actually thinking about the breath and being conscious of the breath? Because when we take the time to really drop into the breath, it changes so much of what's going on within our body. It
Yeah.
makes effect on the body, it makes effect on the mind, it calms our nervous system, ideally. And as we
Mhm.
have a calm nervous system, it sends signals to the body that the body is safe. When the body feels safe, the body is then able to start to release, relax, and let go. Same with the mind.
Gotcha. And it's interesting because I think we chatted about this in Guatemala, but I've realized that I myself have incredibly shallow breaths, and there's long periods of time in between where I actually take a breath. Like my body's still doing what it's doing, but I know that that's tied into something, right? But something that was very hard for me to hear when I was first coming into this awareness was like, people sharing essentially, you're not breathing correctly. And it's like, hang on, what do you mean? Like, I don't even have to think about this, but you're telling me I'm doing it wrong. What do you mean? Right? I can't even breathe properly. So, it's not something we come here and, we're born and someone teaches us, okay, this is how you breathe. But it's definitely something that is something worth learning or at least checking in with so that we can truly get maximum oxygen delivery and all of the other tremendous, endless benefits that come from breathing correctly. So, Jake, for the people who are watching us right now, how can we communicate how one would go about effectively breathing? Now, something that
Yeah.
I've heard is as you take a breath in, try to feel it all the way down into your toes. Right? That's one thing I've heard. Have you heard that one? Or, is there one
I
that you
have.
found to be
I
a
feel
bit
like
more
that's very
impactful?
advanced.
Oh,
I feel like it's very advanced to feel it. Feel it in your pinky toe. That's yes, you can, and that just takes a whole lot of awareness, concentration, focus. I think that would be a very advanced thing. I would say to keep things as simple as possible, make your breath longer than it was before. Like notice where your breath is now without trying to change or shift anything.
mm,
Once you're aware of it, now can we start to bring awareness to it? Now, what would it feel like to start to allow the inhales and the exhales to become a little bit longer? And
mm,
then as you do that, start to notice where the breath is. Where do you feel it in your body? And then when we start to actually have the awareness first of breathing, like I am consciously breathing, I'm consciously allowing my breath to expand. It seems like my breath is getting stuck here, or I could only really feel it, let's say, like in the belly or in the chest. And it's like, okay, now that we're aware of where we're starting, we have the map, we have the location. Now let's extend the destination. So we're not
mm,
going, go right to the toes. It's like, let's actually figure out where we're at first. And I'm not going to say, let's, if you're feeling the breath only in your chest, I'm not going to be like, now bring it all the way to your toes. That's just like, that's really advanced. So it's like, let's start by just expanding this breath. And can you feel it now? Maybe move from your chest down to your belly. Or can you let it feel like it's expanding up? And when we start to get really good at that, it becomes more of we're moving energy. We're moving
mm,
prana through the body. And
yeah,
prana basically means life force energy. It's the breath that we take in. So it's like we're breathing in this sense of energy. And then when we're allowing ourselves to really connect to it and become conscious with it, we're taking this energy that we're breathing in and we're allowing it to flow and move through the body. When we
mm,
allow ourselves to get into a place where we're really open and aware of this, we are feeling the flow of energy as it starts to move through us.
understood. Okay, well, thank you for that. And I stand, humbly enlightened that I was maybe going a little bit too advanced in trying to learn how to breathe. So thank you for that.
Go right to the pinky toe. Yeah, good for you
Yeah.
if you're able to go right there. That was definitely not my case.
Yeah, no,
I got baby step
I'm
these
nowhere near
things.
there. I'm like halfway down.
Okay.
But Jake, I'm curious, in with all of this knowledge, right? I'm curious what you've picked up in terms of like if we were to look at, say, the men you've had the pleasure of working with or consulting with and things like that, right? When we have those challenges when it comes to taking those deep, full breaths, right? Do you find that there's maybe any trends, if you will, in what these men have experienced that have led to them having this, these deep or these shallow breaths. They're not fully feeling in their body, all of these things. Have you noticed anything particular?
Yeah, it's I would say the cases that I've seen a lot is it tends to be closed off, protected in a sense of the heart. So a lot of the breathing, if I'm really tuning into somebody and watching their breath, a lot of times the breathing is just the belly.
Mm,
And if I take the time to really try to slow things down and get them to pull their breath a little bit higher, it's hitting a wall. It's getting stuck. So
okay.
being able to create a space where we're able to, how can we start to actually open up the chest? Let's actually look at the body in a physical way and see, are there parts of the body that we're actually closing off? Where are you feeling really tight? And what I end up seeing a lot of times with some people that I end up seeing is they're hunched down. They're kind of like they're closed off in a place of kind of like protecting or closing off throughout the chest. It seems to be another big energy spot that I've there's obviously others, but a lot that I have seen as far as like a common basis is this kind of protection that we tend to layer onto the heart, like a armor or a wall,
Mm,
and not
mm,
really allowing ourselves to open up and show that vulnerability. So it's like, how can we allow ourselves to move past just the belly, which is going to be more of this kind of like willpower, drive, self-confidence
mm,
area, and how can we allow ourselves to use that and drive it up into our chest and our heart? And a lot of it is really taking the time to slow things down
right.
and to build a place of trust and to learn to slowly get into it that way. It's something I would say like we don't want to rush it. We want to be able to make like able to feel like you're safe. And that's what a lot of, going through breath work and going through yoga, a lot of these practices and meditation is in a sense to help soften us, to help bring us
Mm,
into a place of safety within ourselves. And it's from this place of safety that more than is able to come up. We're not going to a lot of times have anything that's going to come up that doesn't feel safe. So it's
right.
like, how safe of an environment can I create within myself? And as I create a safer environment, more stuff is able to come up and be addressed in a safe way.
Understood. Understood. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And do you feel, whether you've done this yourself or even observed in others, do you feel that as men, we almost have this inner knowing that, oh my goodness, if I embrace certain practices such as yoga and meditation, right, I'm going to connect with some of those deeper feelings. So we kind of keep that wall up because we're, out of fear, a place of fear. That's one of the things we want to talk about. Like, do you find that that happens, or has that been a reflex even for yourself at a certain point?
Yeah, I would say definitely it's, unfortunately, and this is ideally changing, is like, a lot of us as men were taught like we're not allowed to feel our feelings or express them or show a vulnerable side. We have to, what was always like thrown out was to be a man, you have to be tough and like this is what it means.
Yeah.
And it's like I've noticed throughout my own path, it's like trying to release those old belief patterns that were thrown upon me and thrown upon, you know, the other generations in my life. And, a lot of the men, it's like we are set up with that. We're programmed that in a sense. So it's like, how can we start to release that program and allow ourselves to step into a place that is more vulnerable and
Mm,
heartfelt and realize, what is it truly to be masculine and to redefine what that actually means. Like, how
yeah.
can we show up more fully and learn to actually embrace a more wholeness of knowing that we are actually masculine and feminine, and if we're
Mm.
able to bring that together in a wholeness, we can be better men, better people, better humans, better beings in general.
Yeah, I love that, and that's an interesting one because I find that when, the conversation around us embodying masculine and feminine energy, right? I find that sometimes can get those ears closed and people walking away, especially men. It's like, what do
Yeah,
you mean I have feminine energy within me? I'm a man. Like, what are you talking about? And we feel it as like almost like a challenge to who we are and our sense of identity. But, I think that there's a lot of learning that happens within the wellness space around the fact that, we have a balance of both, right? Sure, as men, we might lead with a bit more of that masculine energy, but we still have the feminine within us. And there is a time and place for us to tap into that and allow that to lead as well. Right.
yeah,
Have you found yourself having that challenge as well and communicating that fact that we kind of have both present within us?
definitely. And so I do feel like the bigger thing behind that, I guess, is also as we talk about it. not just assuming that people know what feminine energy is or masculine energy. And it's
Yeah.
like, this is a good moment to actually kind of like go into a little bit more depth of like, what
Good.
is feminine energy? And the sense of feminine energy is this more kind of like openness, this place where we're able to become a little bit softer into things in a way,
Right.
to be able to hold more open space, to be nurturing. And it's like this nurturing aspect, this softening aspect are beautiful qualities to be able to embody, and they're more considered more of a feminine quality. But then you have the opposite side. If you're bringing in this masculine, you have this protector, which could also go in with this nurturing aspect. Like they
Mhm.
could play nicely together, and then you have this sense of power and strength is going to be a masculine energy, a drive, a power, a force, masculine energy. But then how can we allow ourselves to find this bit of a flowing energy, feminine energy? Would be considered more flow. So how can we allow ourselves to bring these beautiful qualities together to be a more
Right.
whole being? And then we're
Yeah.
able to find this balance where it's able to be more of an expressive, open flow. And when we're in this most expressive, open flow, it's like this sense of masculine and feminine is if there's something greater than the separate. Like it's the whole is greater than the sum. So
Yeah.
it's like a whole being versus, just looking at these labels of masculine or feminine, but it's like it's a whole new, bigger essence, a wholeness.
That's very well put. I find that one of the biggest fallacies that was passed down to me that I'm so grateful to have unlearned and released is this idea that, what women are looking for is just this raw, pure, 100% always in his masculine energy kind of man. And, I've been dumbfounded in certain situations as I was younger to find out that no, it's actually these softer, often classified as a bit more feminine traits that when you as a man can embody those things, you are shown as like the ultimate weapon. Like you've really become this ideal partner, right? This person who looks capable of catering to me when, I need that bit of loving and protection and all that kind of stuff. But you can also sit and have a conversation with me, right? We can talk about feelings. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't see you as weaker. I actually see you as somewhat stronger and more in tune with yourself because you know that you can do this and there won't be any type of challenge to your masculinity and how I see you in a negative way. I've really seen that. And I think it's been so beautiful to witness among more men, as they really do lean into more of these qualities and get more out of their relationships and more fulfillment in their life because now they don't need to hide certain parts of themselves and they can actually be curious and explore different parts of themselves as well.
Yeah, fully
I've noticed
agree.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something I'm curious, as we were asking about the men, when you notice the shallow breaths and, the different things that they might be hinting at as being within the body and whatnot. Have you noticed that be any different for the women that you've worked with? When they tend to have those times when they are, breathing super shallow or not breathing all that much or have that tension within the body. Are you noticing that there's a common thread, some trends or anything like that that they are often dealing with?
I definitely say it seems the women that I have worked with, it's easier to get in a sense of like they're more open, more expressive, more it's easier for them to drop in a place of vulnerability and softness. Um, and it also depends on the person. Like sometimes it takes some time to build up that trust. Maybe they had some situations with masculine in the past. So it's like, all right, now how can I allow myself to show up and make sure that, they realize this is a safe place.
Right.
And so once they're able to realize it's a safe place, then it's easier to go into a place of vulnerability and openness. But I definitely have found like in most cases with females, uh, it has been easier to drop in a little bit deeper. I feel like they're more open and expressive to drop into the emotional, to drop into the vulnerability. But like I said, it could be dependent on different people. But I would say in general, that has been my experience.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing that. And you touched on a concept that I'm sure a lot of people might hear a lot of, but much like masculine and feminine energy, we might not necessarily get a bit of an explanation behind that, right? So, when we are talking about, the idea of, I totally lost my train of thought. Hopefully that comes back to me. That does happen sometimes. So one question I want to ask you, man, is, as men, what do you find we do really well when it comes to taking care of ourselves and our mental health? Because we just finished up, June with that being Mental Health Awareness Month. And there was a big focus on, what are we doing? What can we do? What are the things that we are witnessing within the male community and what's happening with them, right? So, what are some things that you notice we're really good at?
Hmm. I would say a lot of men, their entry point to going somewhere deeper is based on the physical. So I would say it's easier to get a guy to be like, hey, let's do something physical. Let's go out, let's go for a run, let's go to the gym. Like it's I feel like that's an easier entry point
Mm,
for a lot of men to go a little bit deeper.
yeah,
And then once you're in a place where you're able to, have those moments where we're, working something out in a physical way, so it makes it a little bit easier to open up in a deeper way. And
yeah,
so I do feel like that for a lot of men, that is an entry point is getting into more of like the physical aspect. But I feel like everybody's a little bit different. So it's like maybe fitness is not your thing. So it's like I feel like with anything, it's like what is your thing? What lights you up? What is it that you enjoy? Are we able to go into any other kind of activity that's not just, survival mode or, trying to only be so focused on work. It's like how can we
mhm,
allow ourselves to go somewhere a little bit deeper? Like what other hobbies, interests you have? And
right.
then once you're able to do that, like ideally, once you're into that mode, it opens you up another way where we're able to go a little bit deeper and maybe have a safer place to express on a more emotional, deeper level.
Right. No, I like that. I appreciate that. For the men out there who are really trying to, take the reins on their health and their overall sense of well-being and whatnot, right? What do you think would be a really good starting point for a man who's saying, okay, now's the time. What should they start to explore or be curious about as they start out on this journey of taking better, more intentional care of themselves, as you've seen it?
Yeah, I think that's such a personal question for a lot of people, and it's like how in tune can they be with like I said, it ties into the last answer of like what is something you actually enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mistake that a lot of people end up making is they're like, oh, like if I want to be better at fitness, I need to go to the gym. And it's like not necessarily. Like you need to just make sure you find some action or some activity in your life. Like what are things that you can do that are going to help bring you into a more active lifestyle, whether that's walking or maybe you like to hike, maybe you just want to be out in nature. Maybe it is a gym, maybe going to a class. So it's like it's trying out different modalities and different things, and ideally looking for the one that creates this bit of a spark, like something that's like, ah, like this is something that there's something about this that my body is liking. Like, how can I continue with this?
Right.
And we talk about health, and I went right to fitness, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the thing. It's like there are so many modalities and aspects of health and well-being, and it could be as starting a meditation, going into any other activity that's going to be able to get us out of so much of the thinking mind and more into a deeper sense of feeling into the body, a deeper
Yeah.
aspect of how can we connect beyond just the thinking of the mind and find different ways to disconnect from just the thought patterns that start to arise. And there's a lot
Mm,
of beautiful modalities that can do that. Yoga, meditation, you know, any kind of sport is a beautiful way to get out of the mind and into the body.
mm. Right. And for those who are watching and who might be a little bit more cerebral before they start to try something out, right? Do you have any maybe, books that you might turn them towards or maybe even movies or videos and things like that that, for those who are just curious, they really want to just wet their beak and start going from there, kind of, go down the rabbit hole from there. Are there certain ones that you find would be really welcoming that they could embrace easily? It's not overly jargoned and all that kind of stuff. It's more
Yeah,
just like I can get to the point kind of thing.
I would feel like one of the most uh like a beautiful spiritual book that I've read that comes in such a kind of a I don't want to say sneaky way, but such a it's not in your face is
Okay.
The Alchemist. And I
Yeah.
just love The Alchemist. It's a fable. It's a story that it's easy to get kind of like wrapped in, and then you start noticing the little lessons that are actually in that. So I feel like was a great book or introduction for spirituality for me. And then when I started to get a little bit more in depth as far as like, oh, let's go a little bit deeper. Like, what does this stuff mean? Like, how can I go into understanding what's going on with the mind? Michael Singer was a really good influence on some of the books that he has written. Living Untethered was a really good one for me, and The Untethered Soul. were both really big ones for me to actually start to understand there's a separation behind the mental chatter in the mind and who I truly am. So that was a
Mm.
good introduction.
Okay, well, thank you for those. Yeah, I mean, I've read The Alchemist. That's one of those ones that I commit to reading once a year because it seems like every single time it's like, was this it just added? Like I just noticed something brand new about this time, and it's like the 10th time. So
Amazing.
definitely, yeah, definitely recommend that. And that was a great reminder to me, or a great one that really hammered home that point of everything you have is within you already, right? That
Mhm.
was definitely one of my main takeaways from that. What was your main takeaway from The Alchemist, Jake? Like for yourself, or does it change every time you read it?
It does as well. Like I feel like it's like anything with with like a deeper truth. Like the more we are connected to our own truth, the different aspect we're going to be able to see every time that we hit something. I I feel like with The Alchemist, it was interesting in the sense of like trusting the journey, listening to what's going on within, and the whole essence of like this full circle uh aspect of things, which I always find really fascinating whenever I have any really big like spiritual essence of like, oh, everything actually needed to happen exactly as it happened to get me right where I am today. And it was like this, it's always becomes the big like mind blown every time. It's like I end up forgetting it and then it comes back in. It's like, oh yes, it needed to all happen. And
Yeah,
it's like I feel like that is always like the bigger connection for me is this all this constant reminder of like it had to happen exactly the way it did because it did. Like it all happened
beautiful.
because it did. And it's like it was all so needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful, man. Thank you for vulnerably sharing that. I truly appreciate it. The thought that left my mind earlier came back to me. So
All right.
it's around, with you being such a public-facing individual, right? And having your one-on-ones and your classes and your sessions, all those kind of things, right? You're around a lot of people, right? So I'm sure I've seen you in action. You're a very mindful person. But, my question to you is, how can we as men really work to create these places where the women and other people around us feel safe, right? These safe spaces, because I think that it's a term. Even since I began in my work and all that kind of stuff, I would hear the term, but it's like, okay, do you just mean like nothing's happening outside, no one's getting shot, is that what you mean? Or what, like, what's a safe space? And so as I got to understand it a bit more, it started to really tie into other things, right? Like, it's really about how I feel in that space. Do I feel I can trust this individual? Do I feel like they have a different motive than they're communicating to me? Certain things like that they got on my radar around how do you actually create a safe space? So, for those interested and watching right now and looking to, embody more of that, what would you say, we can do to really build some of those habits and apply those things to create safer spaces for those around us?
I fully feel that the safer we are within ourselves, the safer we are for everyone else around us. So it all starts from within. So it's like as you create this place of safety and trust within yourself, people could feel that. It makes a difference. As soon as you walk in before you even say anything, like there is an essence that comes around. People's nervous systems react to other people's nervous systems. So if you allow yourself to step into a place grounded, nurtured, relaxed, people feel that.
Yeah.
So even before going into a place, like checking in with yourself, like making sure, what kind of energy am I bringing into this? Am I a safe place right now?
Mm,
And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, like, can I take a moment to actually pause to ground myself to feel this sense of safety within and then allow myself to come in? But it all starts with that. And then
right.
along that way, yes, there's different things that you could do to help create a safe environment. And it could be, just making, depending on if it's like you're with a group, like creating a safe container, actually having some conversations ahead of time to create this container, this place of safety, making some agreements together as a group,
Mm,
being very mindful of language and being inclusive, and just creating a space where people know that they can come and raise their hand if they're feeling uncomfortable or have a conversation and be something place somebody that people can feel comfortable talking to and know that you know we just want to do the best for everyone around us. So if I said something in a bit of a unawareness, or maybe my consciousness wasn't a place where I was aware that I was saying something that can make somebody feel a certain way, like let's have a conversation about that. Let's bring that to my awareness so I can, you know, change the way that I'm speaking and
Yeah.
have a deeper awareness of what I'm putting out there. But I feel like all of it does work starts with our own transmission, like ourself. Like how are we within ourself? We're a place of safety that can be felt with other people. And so it begins there. And then
Mhm.
from there it's expanded into the space.
Okay. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, man. I really appreciate that. Entrepreneurship is something that is, it's weaved all throughout your background. You are definitely not someone who's afraid to, be ambitious and take a leap and really do something different, right? Now, I'm curious, what has your path on being an entrepreneur, what has that really shown you about yourself?
Oh gosh. I feel with the first part of it, a lot of it is like lead based off of what is exciting me. So, for instance, creating different events or retreats, when I first started doing it, was like, I really wish this was here. It was like, oh, I really wish I was able to find something that would support me in this way. And it's like, if I couldn't find it, I was like, oh gosh, now that means I need to create it. And so it's like it's listening to those moments, those desires that I have, you know, that I know that would help me. And if it's not there, it's like, okay, like it's now, I guess that means it's my job to do it or to partner with somebody or to find it. And it's like that was always what's kind of has led my own growth with entrepreneurship is finding places that I yearned for within me that I felt like could be very supportive. And then so if it's not there, it's like, okay, like I need to create it. Or even just going towards, the things that have really filled me up and have given me so many gifts and love. And like, okay, now that I've embodied that and have received it, now how can I give it back as you know, it feels like a thank you, like a kind of a receive and give.
Yeah. Beautiful. And, I think a big testament to you doing that, where you identify a bit of a problem as like, oh, what's out there? Oh, I guess I got to create it, is something that, you're doing right now, which is yoga business coaching, right? And, I'd love if you could share a little bit about that and what really inspired you to bring that about and how it's been received by the world so far.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I feel like that one came on a bit of a meditation. It was like it was revisiting kind of like the younger version of me when I was first starting out and like what could I have like had in those moments that really could have like been supportive to my own journey. And it was like throughout the years, it has been a lot of money and a lot of investment and working with so many different people to build my business, to build the behind the scenes and the website and, how to get everything up and running. And it's been a lot of trial and error, I guess, along the way and a lot of investing and a lot of money. And eventually it came to a point where it was like, oh, like now I'm doing all of it on my own. Like I can, I easily make my own website and do my events and the retreats and plan it all. And it was like that came through experience. And throughout that, it was like, it would have been really nice to have someone that could have taken me under my wing and just been like, hey, let me show you how to create these things. And then in that moment, it was like, oh, again, I'm gonna be that person now.
Yeah.
Like it was like a kind of like an obvious of like, oh, I wish I would have had that. Why isn't that there?
Yeah.
And it is there in a way, but it wasn't in my radar. So it was like, all right, like how can I be that person? How can I be that person that can be that support to that, that younger yogi that I was, where it was like, I was just like working so hard to make enough money to finally feel like I had enough money to invest in the website. And then from there, working so hard to have enough money that I can finally invest in doing, some marketing. And it was just like, it would have been really nice if I had someone that was just like, hey buddy, let me help you out. Let's work on the smarter way to do it. And let me teach you how to do it so you don't have to always rely on me. And I feel like that's the bigger thing is like let's teach people how to do it for themselves so they can go out there and actually realize that like you have to constantly be changing your website. You have to constantly be changing what you're doing. You have to, there has to be extension and growth there. And if you're always relying on someone else to do all that for you, it can be a slower process, a harder process, a more expensive process versus if you learn the tools and start to apply the tools, it makes things so much easier where you're able to get to a place where you're not just hustling for it, but you're thriving and it becomes more of a flow because you've learned how to create the systems that actually help support you. And then you're working a whole lot smarter versus having to work so hard.
Yeah. So it sounds like you really help to empower, say if I had a yoga business and I came to you, you empower me with a lot of the tools and know-how so that I can spend more of my time doing the stuff that I'm really good at and love versus the more
Yeah.
administrative kind of behind the scenes type stuff. Is that about
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of it too is like a lot of people go into a lot of the yogis that are going into they want to be able to, teach classes. And it's like the sad thing is like good luck, actually thriving and surviving just by teaching classes. Like it's like we have to be able to kind of think outside that. Like how are we going to get the private clients? How are we going to be able to uh, do event classes and retreats and even do passive income and set up our own systems and courses. And that's the way to be able to actually make this a thriving business versus
Right.
what I see a lot of people do is they get stuck in the mode of just teaching classes and they're trying to catch up to that. So all of a sudden, we're doing 30 classes a week and just feeling like burned out. And when we
Mm,
do that, we have no energy, drive, uh, power to actually think beyond that and get
right.
more into a creative aspect where, things could flow in a whole lot easier. And it's like, I get it. I've been there. I've been through that whole thing. And it is like, especially the moment where you're teaching all those classes and it just feels like, oh my gosh, I'm going to teach a fourth class today. Like
Right.
it catches up versus being able to, step into things a bit more expansive and opening and learn how to, make the best out of the time that you have and be able to really give your whole self to the people that are in front of you.
Yeah, and I so appreciate your offering because I think it's so unique and needed, and I think so many people want exactly what you're offering. Like, please just help me understand how to do this thing that I love better, so I can just do it
Yeah,
more often, right? And I think someone like yourself with over like 20 years of experience within your industries, right? Like the fact that you're so willing to share this knowledge and information, you're not trying to just keep it like in this ivory tower type of setting where no, it's only for me and I put in my time, so no one else deserves this. I truly appreciate how intentional you've been about creating this so that people can access it because I think it's going to help a lot of people, like you said, go from that survive to thrive, space, right? Because they'll understand, they'll be able to actually ask another human who's been through it, how do I do this? Having that space
yeah,
to just be curious and seem, feel like we might seem a little bit, out of the loop or not in the know, and having someone on the other side who's just there to empower us, that goes such a long way. So, I'm curious, what's your best client review so far been? The one that sticks out to you most around, people who have received your service so far?
yeah. I would say that the most beneficial thing that I've noticed so far is working more with presenting it for like teacher trainers. So it's like during a teacher training, like coming in and presenting the business section of it, and then being able to get some clients based off of that, and then from there, really taking them from the beginning and getting certain systems in place so it doesn't have to feel like I'm going from this struggle of hustle then to thrive. It's like how can we
Right.
drop early on before
Yeah.
we get to a place of burnout? And that's I think that that's the hardest challenge a lot of times is like a lot of times we get to a place of burnout and I can't do this any longer. Now I'll go ahead and like do this other thing, but it's more of like a Hail Mary
Yeah.
versus if you're able to get into it early on, I feel like that's when we start seeing the most success because it's
Mhm.
like you have a drive already and it comes from a place of more openness and love versus like, oh shit, I gotta find a different way to do this because it's not like right now I just feel beat up. And so
Mhm.
it becomes a more of a challenging process when if we do it early on and have things set up from the get-go, it allows us to be in a place where we're more open from the start.
Understood. Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And something you mentioned in the last little while there is burnout. And so I have a question for you, which is, around entrepreneurs, being an entrepreneur yourself, and I'm also a two-time entrepreneur. So, this question, I'm very curious about your insight as well. What have you shared, or what do you think would be super impactful for entrepreneurs to be mindful of when it comes to taking care of themselves as they go? Right?
Mm,
Sometimes I think we're just like, okay, you know what? I need a 25th hour in the day, and that's just the plight of the entrepreneur. So there's no time for anything else. But sometimes I feel like that's kind of, running a hundred miles a minute, and then it's like we're gonna hit this wall, and then we're gonna be very disappointed at how long it takes us to catch speed again. So, what are some things that you encourage your
yeah.
entrepreneurs to do as they're building, as they're doing the motions to really get this thing to what they're imagining it to be? What personal practices do you encourage them to really, try to incorporate, or things that they can do for themselves to support themselves as they're doing this?
Yeah, I think that's such an important question. Self-care, always self-care, like making sure that you're taking the time to truly show up and get yourself in a
Mm,
calm, relaxed state in a way. Like, how can we allow ourselves to keep doing the things that open us up? Because if we're not showing up and taking care of that part for us, and we're just holding that part of stress, the part of stress that we're holding, it gets us into a place of fear and survival. When we're in a place of fear and
mm,
survival, we're more closed off. We're putting out that energy of, how can I quickly change this? It's more of this kind of like survival mode and mentality. People could feel that. And it makes every task you do so much more challenging because we're a bit more closed off. If we allow ourselves to really take the time first thing in the morning, I would always say is like take the time and really let yourself ground in. Get a meditation practice, get a movement practice in, get a
mm.
little bit of learning in as well. So we're still expanding that intellect with our job, and then from there, we're more already open, relaxed, receptive. And it's from that place we can get so much more done in a whole lot more efficient way. If I ever show up at a place where it's like I'm feeling high strung, I'm in a place of fear, I make a whole lot more mistakes. I'm not as focused. I'm taking all this time because I'm messing things up along the way. So it's like I'm making all these mistakes and I'm putting in more time to fix the mistakes. And then my mind just keeps on spinning and it ends up making the day a whole lot more challenging, a lot longer, and it starts to build resentment. Versus when I come into a day already feeling whole, alive, and free and open, things flow in a different way. I'm more aware, I'm more present, I'm more fully here. I don't make the same kind of mistakes, I don't forget the things, and the workflow happens in a whole lot smoother way. And it's like, yes, I have to invest some time in the morning, but the thing that we need to realize is we invest that time in the morning, we are saving so much more time throughout the day because we're not
Mm.
making the same kind of mistakes or having the same kind of challenges. So it
That's true.
really
And I mean,
makes
even
such a
referring to it
huge
as an
difference.
investment. Yeah, even in
Yeah.
referring it as an investment, right? We're seeing, or we're acknowledging that we're going to get something out of doing it, right? So the language is super important when it comes to that too.
Yeah, and I'll definitely say since I've started meditating, the things I'm able to get done in a day now compared to where it was before is night and day. Like I'm not spending the same kind of time lost in the mind and the spinning of things and the stress and the survival and the fear and just like so wrapped up into that that it's like I'm much more open and through that openness, it's just like it's just a lot happens in a day
Yeah.
in a beautiful way where it feels more like flow versus push or fight.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I hope our listeners really do hear that message because it's super important. And I think the older we get, the more we see that we need to be investing in ourselves so that we can actually have that clarity. We can show up and do these things that we truly want to do. And chances are we have a lot of that inner knowing of the things that we could tap into that are really going to help us to get closer to where it is we want to be a whole lot sooner. So, Jake, as we are winding down for today, something that I want to ask you, and if we can really just fully hear all of the wonderful things that you've heard about yourself and how you show up in doing the work that you do. What would you say is the Jake difference of working with you?
The Jake difference. An interesting question. I Let me sit with that. I want to feel into that. I Well, first of all, I would definitely say that I'm fully there. Like I show up fully. And then through that full presence, able to really get an idea and understand where the person in front of me is at and then from that being able to find the destination. It kind of goes back to everything that we have talked about the entire time, as far as like the breathing and breathing into your toes. It's like, well, let's actually figure out where you are within that breath and where you are within this journey of breath first. And then from there, let's create the path. If you want to get to your toes, okay, but let's figure out where you're at and the steps to actually get there. And I do feel like that's something that I am able to drop into in a beautiful way through the experience that I've had on my own and through working with people throughout the years. Is I'm able to really sit with where they are, create a safe place for them, and to be able to really create this beautiful roadmap where the process can just be a beautiful blooming. I'm just imagining just like rosebud and just the opening of the flower. We're not forcing the petals open. It's not going to survive, but let's really nurture what's happening within that bud and allow it to blossom in such a beautiful way.
I love that, man. Well, thank you for sharing that. And, for those who are considering, working with you, they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you? Where can they find you? What's your website? Things like that. And, if you just want to share some of the services that you do offer, just for those who have maybe tuned in a little bit later, why they might really see value in connecting with you. And perhaps if you have any upcoming events or workshops, any of those types of offerings that you want to put everyone onto their awareness.
Yeah, wonderful. The easiest way is online. My website is feelingmoved.com. You can also just Google my name. I'm pretty easy to find. So Jake Ferree. And yeah, I have some beautiful offerings that are coming up. Event class where we're connecting movement yoga with violin, or live violinist, which I've done a few times, and it's such a beautiful offering that I'm feeling really excited about. Yoga retreat happening in October in Mexico, and also doing business mastery. Focusing on yoga instructors and wellness instructors that are ready to take their business into a thrive and flow mentality versus hustle and grind.
Mm. Love that. Well, for everyone, considering it, I definitely encourage you to reach out and connect with Jake. He's an awesome soul, and he's obviously got a whole ton of wisdom that he so freely wants to share. So, Jake, thank you so much for taking the time today with me, man. It's been really amazing to,
Mm.
get another peek into your world and all the wonderful things that are going on and that you're helping to make happen in this world. Thank you for showing up as you do, bro. I'm so glad that we connected earlier in February, and I'm so glad to be on this planet at the same time as you to, walk side by side on this journey, man. So thank you. I truly appreciate your presence.
Thanks, brother. It's always beautiful to see you and just spend time with you. You live in my heart, man. So it's nice to see you.
Likewise, man. Well, to everyone who tuned in today, we truly appreciate you. The recording of our live conversation is actually going to be posted and it's going to be shared on both of our accounts. If you have any questions at any point, you can drop those in the comments. You can reach out to us directly through DM, and we're here for you, right? This is a community conversation, very much just as much for you as it is for us. And so anytime, if you are hit with inspiration for a question, comment, anything like that, get in touch with us and we will respond as soon as possible. So until next time, thank you for everyone who tuned in with the comments and all the love, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everyone.